The morning ritual of Cruelty area. Chen pushed through the glass doors of Sterling Tech, her worn messenger bag clutched tightly against her chest. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble lobby, but none longer than the shadow she seemed to cast over herself. At 26, she had perfected the art of invisibility, moving through the world like a whisper that no one bothered to hear. Her daily routine never varied. Arrive early, slip past the reception desk with a quiet nod to Marcus, the kind security guard who was the only person who ever smiled at her, then take the service elevator to avoid the crowded main one. Floor 17, Data Analytics Department, Cubicle 247, tucked away in the corner where the fluorescent lights flickered and the air conditioning never quite reached, the Predator's Circle. But today, like every day for the past 8 months, they were waiting for her. "Oh, look, the ghost girl lives," sneered Jessica Martinez, the department's self-appointed queen bee. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against her designer coffee cup as she blocked Aria's path. "Did you raid a thrift store again, or is that the same outfit from yesterday?" Aria's cheeks burned. The gray cardigan was indeed from a thrift store, paired with black pants that had seen better days, but it was clean, pressed, and professional. It just wasn't expensive. "I think she's going for that homeless chic look," chimed in Derek Walsh, Jessica's loyal sidekick. His laugh was sharp and mean, designed to cut. "Very avant-garde." The small crowd that had gathered laughed along, their voices creating a symphony of cruelty that followed Aria to her desk. She kept her eyes down, counting the ugly gray carpet tiles beneath her feet. 43 steps from the elevator to safety. She had counted them every day. The silent observer. What Aria didn't know was that 30 floors above, behind floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city, someone was watching. Wyatt Sterling stood in his executive suite, a cup of black coffee cooling in his hands, his steel-gray eyes focused not on the skyline, but on the security monitors that showed every floor of his building. At 32, Wyatt Sterling was everything Aria was not. Confident where she was timid, commanding where she was invisible, powerful where she felt powerless. He had built Sterling Tech from a small startup into a tech empire worth billions, and he had done it with the kind of ruthless precision that made competitors tremble and employees worship him from afar. But today, his attention was captured by something else entirely. The monitor showing floor 17 revealed a scene that made his jaw tighten with barely controlled anger. He watched as his employees, people he paid generous salaries to represent his company, surrounded a young woman like wolves, circling. "Wounded prey." "Sir?" His assistant David appeared at his elbow. "The board meeting is in 5 minutes." Wyatt didn't move. On the screen, the young woman had reached her desk and was trying to disappear behind her computer monitor. But Jessica Martinez wasn't done with her sport. "Cancel it," Wyatt said quietly, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made grown men scramble to obey. "Sir? Cancel the board meeting. Reschedule it for this afternoon." He turned away from the window, his decision made. "And David, set up a department meeting for floor 17. All hands, 30 minutes. The data that spoke volumes, Wyatt Sterling." Made it his business to know everything about his company, and that included the people who worked for him. He pulled up Aria Chen's file on his computer, though he already knew most of it by heart. He had been watching her for months, not out of any romantic interest, but because something about her work had caught his attention. Hired 8 months ago as a junior data analyst, Aria Chen had quietly become the most productive member of her department. While others spent their time gossiping and politicking, she solved problems. Complex algorithms that stumped senior analysts, she unraveled in hours. System crashes that should have taken days to fix, she diagnosed and corrected before most people even knew there was a problem. Her employee reviews told 2 different stories. Her direct supervisor, a weak man named Paul, who was more interested. In staying popular than managing effectively, gave her mediocre ratings. But the data told the truth. Aria Chen had single-handedly improved their department's efficiency by 37%. She had saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars with her innovations. And she had done it all while being systematically ignored and belittled by her colleagues. The gathering storm. The 17th floor buzzed with nervous energy as word spread about the impromptu meeting. Nobody could remember the last time Wyatt Sterling had set foot in their department, let alone called a meeting. Some whispered that layoffs were coming. Others speculated about a major project announcement. Aria sat at her desk, trying to focus on the quarterly analysis she was preparing, but her hands shook as she typed. The morning's humiliation still burned in her chest, a familiar ache that she had learned to carry like a stone in her heart. "Attention, everyone," Paul's voice crackled over the intercom. "Conference room B. Now, Mr. Sterling will be joining us." The stampede toward the conference room was immediate. Aria hung back, hoping to slip in unnoticed and claim a seat in the back. But fate had other plans. The moment everything changed. Wyatt Sterling entered the conference room like a force of nature. Conversation died instantly. The man who appeared in business magazines and financial news was even more imposing in person. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Aria made in 3 months, but it wasn't his wealth that commanded attention. It was his presence, the way he seemed to own every atom of air in the room. His eyes swept across the assembled employees, cataloging faces, reading expressions. When his gaze fell on Aria, huddled in the corner chair she had managed to claim, something flickered in his expression. Not pity, but recognition. "I've been reviewing departmental performance," he began, his voice carrying easily through the room without needing to be raised. "The numbers are interesting." Jessica Martinez preened, assuming praise was coming her way. Derek straightened his tie. Paul smiled nervously. "Productivity is up 37% over the last 8 months, Wyatt continued. "Error rates are down 42%. Customer satisfaction with our analytics services has reached an all-time high." Murmurs of satisfaction rippled through the room. People began to relax, smile, prepare to accept congratulations. "But here's what's really interesting." Wyatt's voice dropped, becoming dangerously quiet. "These improvements can be traced to the work of exactly one person." The room held its breath. Wyatt walked slowly around the conference table, his footsteps the only sound. He stopped directly behind Aria's chair, placing one hand on the back of it. She felt the warmth of his presence, smelled the subtle scent of his cologne, and wondered if it was possible to die from embarrassment. "Aria Chen," he said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "has contributed more to this department in 8 months than some of you have in your entire tenure here." The declaration that changed everything. The silence was deafening. Jessica Martinez's perfect smile cracked like a porcelain mask. Derek's face went pale. Paul looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair, but Wyatt Sterling wasn't finished. "Ms. Chen," he said, his voice gentle now as he addressed her directly. "Would you please stand?" Aria's legs felt like water, but somehow she managed to rise from her chair. She could feel every eye in the room on her, burning with shock, confusion, and in some cases, barely concealed fury. "Ladies and gentlemen," Wyatt announced, his hand moving to rest lightly on Aria's shoulder, "I want you to meet the future of this department. Effective immediately, Ms. Chen will be promoted to senior analyst with a 30% salary increase." Gasps echoed through the room. Aria's heart hammered so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. But Wyatt Sterling wasn't done delivering his message. He turned to face the room, his expression cold as winter steel. "I've also been made aware of certain cultural issues in this department." The kind of behavior that has no place in my company. His eyes found Jessica Martinez, held her gaze until she looked away. Anyone who has a problem with talent being recognized, regardless of how it's packaged, is welcome to find employment elsewhere. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Then, in a voice that carried an unmistakable note of possession and protection, Wyatt Sterling delivered the words that would change everything. From now on, anyone who has an issue with Ms. Chen answers. To me personally. She's under my protection now. The room erupted in whispers, gasps, and the sound of a dozen phones buzzing with urgent text messages. But Arya heard none of it. She was too busy staring up at the man who had just changed her. Entire world with a few simple words, wondering if she was dreaming and terrified that she might wake up. The aftermath of declaration. The conference room cleared with unusual speed after Wyatt Sterling's announcement. Employees fled like startled birds, their whispers following them into the hallway. But Arya remained frozen in place, her legs refusing to obey her brain's desperate commands to move. She stared at the empty chairs around the table, trying to process what had just happened. Ms. Chen. Wyatt's voice was gentler now, meant only for her. Walk with me. She turned to face him, her eyes wide behind her wire-rimmed glasses. Up close, he was even more intimidating than she had imagined. His presence filled the room, commanding attention without effort. But his eyes, those steel-gray eyes that had looked so cold addressing the room, were warm when they focused on her. I should get back to my work, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Your work can wait. He gestured toward the door. We need to talk. The executive floor. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending into another world. Arya had never been above the 20th floor, let alone to the executive level where legends were made and fortunes decided. The elevator doors opened to reveal a space that looked more like a luxury hotel lobby than an office. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and original artwork adorned the walls. David, Wyatt's assistant, looked up from his desk with barely concealed curiosity as they passed. Arya caught her reflection in the polished surface of a side table and cringed. Her cardigan looked even more threadbare in these opulent surroundings, her scuffed shoes embarrassingly obvious against the pristine marble. Don't, Wyatt said softly, somehow reading her thoughts. Don't diminish yourself because of where you are. You earned the right to be here. Behind closed doors, Wyatt's office was a study in controlled power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, while dark wood furniture and leather accents created an atmosphere of quiet authority. But what struck Arya most was the wall lined with monitors showing different areas of the building. He really did see everything. Please sit. He gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk, then moved to pour 2 cups of coffee from a service cart. Cream? Sugar? Just black, please. The words came out as a croak. She cleared her throat and tried again. Thank you. He handed her the cup, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her system, and from the way his eyes sharpened, she suspected he felt it too. You're wondering why, he said, settling into his chair with the fluid grace of a predator at rest. Yes. The honesty surprised her. Usually she would have deflected, mumbled something polite and meaningless. But something about his direct approach demanded the same in return. Because talent shouldn't be wasted, he leaned forward slightly, his attention focused entirely on her. Do you know what you've accomplished in 8 months, Arya? The use of her first name sent another small shock through her system. I just did my job. You revolutionized an entire department. The efficiency improvements you implemented saved us $600,000 last quarter alone. Your predictive modeling prevented 3 major system failures, and you did it all while being systematically undermined by people who couldn't see past their own petty prejudices. Arya stared at him, her coffee growing cold in her hands. You were watching me. I watch everyone. His smile was slight but genuine. But you were worth watching. The first wave. The knock on the door interrupted what was becoming an increasingly charged moment. David entered with an expression that mixed urgency with barely controlled panic. Sir, we have a situation, the department meeting. Someone recorded it. Wyatt's expression didn't change, but Arya felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. And it's already online. Social media is exploding. Arya's blood turned to ice. She set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. What do you mean online? David glanced nervously between them. The video shows Mr. Sterling's announcement about your promotion and protection. Some people are interpreting it as romantic. Show me. Wyatt's voice was deadly calm. David reluctantly turned his tablet toward them. The video was grainy, clearly shot secretly on someone's phone, but the audio was clear enough. Arya watched in horror as the scene played out again, seeing it now through different eyes. Wyatt's hand on her shoulder, his protective stance, the way he looked at her when he spoke. The comments below the video were already multiplying like a virus. Office romance alert. Billionaire's new toy. She must be really good at analytics. From zero to hero in one meeting, suspicious much? The viral nightmare within hours, the video had been shared thousands of times. News blogs picked it up, social media influencers dissected it, and the gossip machine went into overdrive. Arya Chen, who had spent her entire adult life trying to be invisible, suddenly found herself the center of a media storm. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Her email inbox overflowed with interview requests, job offers, and messages that ranged from supportive to vicious. Someone had found her social media accounts and leaked her personal photos, dissecting her appearance and speculating about her. Relationship with Wyatt Sterling. The ugly duckling transformation. Billionaire's charity case or secret lover. From cubicle to corner office, the Cinderella story that has everyone talking. The sanctuary by evening, Arya couldn't go home. A crowd of reporters had gathered outside her modest apartment building, cameras ready to capture her looking flustered and overwhelmed, which, she admitted to herself, she absolutely was. Come with me. Wyatt appeared at her cubicle like a guardian angel, his expression grim. You can't stay here, and you can't go home. I can't just disappear, she protested weakly. I have responsibilities, work to finish. The work will wait. Your safety won't. He helped her gather her personal items, his presence creating a protective bubble around her as they made their way to the executive garage. His car was a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than she made in 2 years. The leather seats were buttery soft, and the interior smelled like expensive cologne and possibility. Where are we going? She asked as they pulled out into the city traffic. Somewhere they can't find you. His hands were steady on the wheel, his profile sharp against the neon lights of the city. My penthouse. The penthouse revelation, Wyatt Sterling's penthouse, occupied the entire top floor of a building in the most exclusive part of the city. The elevator opened directly into his living space, revealing an interior that was both luxurious and surprisingly warm. The decor was masculine but not cold, with rich colors and comfortable furniture that invited relaxation rather than intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city lights, and a terrace wrapped around the entire space. But what caught Arya's attention were the personal touches that made it feel like a home rather than a showplace. Books everywhere, a piano in the corner, family photos on the mantel. You play? She asked, nodding toward the piano. Badly, he admitted with a smile that transformed his entire face. But it helps me think. The confession. They sat on the couch, a safe distance apart. sharing Chinese takeout from containers that looked absurdly humble in the opulent surroundings. The silence between them was comfortable now, charged with possibility rather than awkwardness. "I need to tell you something," Wyatt said finally, setting down his chopsticks. "This afternoon wasn't entirely about recognizing your professional contributions." Arya's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been watching you for months, and it hasn't been purely professional interest." He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "There's something about you, Arya. Your strength, your intelligence, the way you handle adversity with such grace. You fascinate me." "I'm not fascinating," she said automatically. "I'm ordinary, forgettable." "You're extraordinary," he corrected firmly. "And the fact that you can't see it only makes you more so." The air between them crackled with tension. Arya felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, terrified to jump, but equally terrified to step back. "The media thinks we're already involved," she said quietly. "I know." His voice was rough. "Does that bother you?" "It terrifies me." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. "I'm not the kind of woman who dates billionaires. I'm not glamorous or sophisticated. I don't know how to navigate this world. You don't need to know." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. "I'll teach you. We'll figure it out together." The first kiss. When he kissed her, it was nothing like she had imagined. It wasn't desperate or demanding, but soft and patient, a question rather than a statement. She had expected to feel overwhelmed, out of her depth, but instead she felt home. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he responded by deepening the kiss. For a moment, the outside world ceased to exist. There were no cameras, no gossip, no cruel comments or viral videos. There was just this, the taste of him, the warmth of his hands, the way he held her like she was precious. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Wyatt rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "This changes everything," he murmured. "I know." She was surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "I'm scared." "So am I." He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze directly. "But I'm more scared of letting you go." The storm intensifies the next morning brought fresh horrors. Someone had leaked additional photos, these showing Arya and Wyatt leaving the building together the previous evening. The speculation reached fever pitch, with blogs and news sites running wild with theories about their relationship. But worse than the media attention were the personal attacks. Someone had dug into Arya's background, finding unflattering photos from college, interviewing former classmates who painted her as a social outcast and opportunist. Her quiet, private life was being dissected and destroyed for public entertainment. Office Cinderella or gold digger. The truth about Arya Chen. From invisible to irresistible, the makeover that caught a billionaire. Sources say Sterling's new love is just using him for money. Arya sat in Wyatt's penthouse, scrolling through the articles with growing horror. Each headline felt like a physical blow, each comment a knife to her already fragile self-esteem. "Turn it off," Wyatt said firmly, taking the tablet from her hands. "Don't torture yourself with their poison." "They're destroying me," she whispered, tears finally spilling over. "Everyone I went to school with, everyone who ever ignored me, now they all have opinions about my life." "They're jealous," he said, pulling her against his chest. "And they're small. Don't let small people make you feel small." But the damage was spreading beyond just gossip sites. Sterling Tech's stock price fluctuated as investors worried about their CEO's judgment. Board members demanded meetings. Competitors gleefully spread rumors about instability in the company leadership. The breaking point. The final straw came when Arya's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, called to tell her that reporters had been harassing the other residents, trying to get embarrassing stories about Arya's past. Her quiet life was becoming a battlefield, with innocent people caught in the crossfire. "I have to go back," she told Wyatt that evening. "I can't hide forever, and I can't let other people suffer because of me." "It's not safe," he protested. "The media circus is out of control." "Then I'll learn to handle it." She stood up, pacing to the windows. The city sparkled below them, millions of lights representing millions of lives, most of them ordinary people like she had been just days ago. "I can't live in hiding. That's not who I want to be anymore." Wyatt watched her with something like pride in his expression. "What do you want to do?" "I want to tell my story. My way, before they twist it any further." She turned to face him, her chin lifted with new determination. "I want to fight back." The transformation had begun. The invisible girl was ready to step into the light, not as a victim or a fairy tale princess, but as herself, stronger, braver, and ready for whatever came next. The decision to fight Arya woke before dawn, her mind crystal clear for the first time in days. The city was still dark outside Wyatt's penthouse windows, but she felt like she was finally seeing everything with perfect clarity. She had spent her entire life making herself small, accepting cruelty as normal, hiding from conflict. But something had shifted during the long, sleepless night. She was tired of being someone else's story. Wyatt found her in his kitchen, fully dressed, sipping coffee and staring out at the awakening city. He was rumpled from sleep, his dark hair messed and his shirt wrinkled, but even in this unguarded state he was devastatingly handsome. "You're up early," he observed, pouring his own coffee. "I couldn't sleep." She turned to face him, and he was struck by the change in her expression. The timid, frightened woman of yesterday was gone, replaced by someone with steel in her spine. "I've made a decision. Tell me. I'm going to hold a press conference. Today. I'm going to tell them exactly who I am and what really happened." Her voice was steady, determined. "I'm done letting other people control my narrative." The preparation. Within hours, Wyatt's penthouse had become a war room. His best publicist, Maria Santos, arrived with a team of media specialists. David coordinated with security firms to ensure Arya's safety. Lawyers reviewed every word she planned to say, looking for potential legal pitfalls. "Are you sure about this?" Maria asked for the third time. She was a sharp woman in her 40s who had managed crisis communications for Fortune 500 companies, but this situation was unprecedented. "Once you open this door, there's no going back. The media will scrutinize every word, every expression." "They're already scrutinizing me," Arya replied calmly. "At least this way, I get to tell the truth." The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Sterling Tech's main conference room. Word spread quickly through media channels. The mysterious woman at the center of the Billionaire romance scandal would finally speak publicly. The transformation Maria's styling team worked quietly but efficiently. They didn't try to change who Arya was, but rather revealed who she had always been underneath the camouflage of insecurity. Her hair was styled to frame her face naturally, her makeup subtle but confidence-enhancing. She wore a navy blue dress. That was professional but flattering, paired with low heels that wouldn't intimidate. When she looked in the mirror, Arya saw herself clearly for the first time. Not the invisible mouse who had hidden in corner cubicles, but a woman with intelligence in her eyes, strength in her posture, and purpose in her expression. "You look beautiful," Wyatt said softly from the doorway. "But more importantly, you look like yourself." The press conference, the main conference room at Sterling Tech, was packed beyond capacity. Reporters filled every seat, cameras lined the walls, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Arya could see Jessica Martinez and Derek Walsh in the back, their expressions a mixture of schadenfreude and nervousness. When Arya walked to the podium with Wyatt at her side, the room fell silent. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks, and she blinked against the sudden brightness. But she didn't falter. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Arya Chen, and I'm here to tell you my story." She spoke for 20 minutes without notes, her words flowing like water finding its path. She talked about her childhood as the daughter of immigrants, her struggles to find her place in the corporate world, the daily humiliation she had endured at Sterling Tech. She described her work, her innovations, her quiet pride in contributions that had gone unrecognized. "I never asked for attention," she said, looking directly into the cameras. "I never wanted to be famous or notorious. I just wanted to do good work and be treated with basic human dignity. When Mr. Sterling recognized my contributions publicly, it wasn't because we were romantically involved. It was because he saw value where others saw only a target for their cruelty." The revelation. Then Arya did something unexpected. She pulled out her phone and began reading actual comments and messages she had received over the past few days. The cruel ones. The ones that attacked her appearance, her background, her worth as a human being. Her voice never wavered, but the impact on the room was palpable. "These messages represent something larger than just gossip about a supposed office romance," she continued. "They represent a culture that punishes women for being noticed, for being successful, for existing in spaces where others don't think we belong." She paused, looking around the room at faces that were no longer hungry for scandal, but thoughtful, even ashamed. "I'm not a fairy tale princess rescued by a prince. I'm not a gold digger or a social climber. I'm a data analyst who happens to be very good at her job. And yes, I'm a woman who has found herself caring deeply for a man who saw her worth when others were blind to it." The admission sent a ripple through the room. Arya felt Wyatt's presence beside her like an anchor, his quiet support giving her strength to continue. The challenge. "So here's what I want to know," Arya said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Why does my relationship with Wyatt Sterling threaten you so much? Is it because I don't look like the women typically seen with powerful men? Is it because I didn't climb the ladder by stepping on others? Is it because my success disrupts your comfortable narrative about who deserves to be valued?" The questions hung in the air like challenges thrown down before an army. "I'm not going anywhere," she declared. "I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to apologize for being noticed, and I'm not going to let anyone else define my worth. I'm Arya Chen. I'm brilliant at what I do. I'm kind, I'm strong, and I deserve the same respect and dignity as anyone else in this room." The response. The questions that followed were respectful, even supportive. Reporters who had come hunting for scandal found themselves inspired by a woman who refused to be anyone's victim. By the time the press conference ended, the narrative had shifted completely. Social media exploded with support for Arya. Arya Chen began trending, with women sharing their own stories of workplace bullying and invisible contributions. The cruel comments were drowned out by messages of admiration and solidarity, but the most important moment came after the cameras stopped rolling. Jessica Martinez approached the podium, her usual confidence nowhere to be found. "Arya," she said quietly, her voice thick with something that might have been regret. I owe you an apology. Several apologies. What we did to you was inexcusable." Arya looked at her former tormentor for a long moment. "Thank you for saying that. It doesn't erase the hurt, but it's a start." Jessica nodded and walked away, her shoulders bowed with the weight of her own reckoning. The new beginning. 3 months later, Sterling Tech's quarterly report showed record profits, largely attributed to innovations in the data analytics department. Under the leadership of senior manager Arya Chen, the company's workplace culture had transformed, with new policies protecting employees from harassment and bullying. Arya and Wyatt's relationship had grown stronger through the crucible of public scrutiny. They had learned to navigate the challenges of their different worlds while maintaining their authentic selves. The wedding, a year later, on a crisp autumn morning. Arya Chen became Arya Sterling in a ceremony that was everything she had never dared to dream of. Not because of its luxury, though the setting was beautiful, but because of its authenticity. Her wedding dress was elegant but comfortable. Chosen because she felt like herself in it, the guest list included her colleagues from Sterling Tech, her family, and a surprising number of women who had reached out to her after her press conference, women who had found their own voices through her example. When Wyatt saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. Not because she looked like a princess, but because she looked like Arya, strong, intelligent, beautiful in her own unique way. The vows. Arya, Wyatt said, his voice carrying clearly through the garden where they were married. You taught me that real strength isn't about power or position. It's about showing up as yourself, even when the world tries to make you small. You made me a better man, not by changing who I was, but by inspiring me to be the best version of myself. Arya's vows brought tears to many eyes. Wyatt, you saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I felt worthless, and loved me not despite my differences but because of them. You taught me that being ordinary is extraordinary when you're authentic. I promise to always be myself with you, to support your dreams as you've supported mine, and to never let either of us forget that real love isn't about being perfect. It's about being perfectly ourselves. The happy ending, as they kissed. For the first time as husband and wife, camera flashes went off around them. But this time, Arya didn't flinch. She had learned that being seen wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace. The little girl who had hidden in corners had become a woman who owned her space in the world. The data analyst who had been invisible had become a leader whose innovations were changing her industry. The target of workplace cruelty had become an advocate for kindness and respect in professional environments. And the woman who had thought she was unlovable had found a love that celebrated her exactly as she was. In the end, it wasn't a fairy tale about transformation from ugly duckling to beautiful swan. It was something better. A story about a woman who discovered that she had never been ugly or ordinary at all. She had simply been waiting for the right moment to let her true self shine. The bullies who had tormented her learned that cruelty has consequences. Some, like Jessica, grew from the experience and became better people. Others found themselves increasingly isolated as the company culture shifted toward kindness and respect. But Arya rarely thought about them anymore. She was too busy building the life she deserved, working on innovations that excited her, mentoring other young women finding their voices, and loving a man who saw her worth from the very beginning. Sometimes, late at night in their shared penthouse, Wyatt would find her at the piano he had taught her to play, working through a melody that was uniquely hers. He would listen from the doorway, marveling at how someone who had once tried so hard to be invisible had become the brightest light in his world. "What are you thinking about?" he would ask, settling beside her on the bench. "Just gratitude," she would reply, leaning into his warmth. "For all of it, even the hard parts. They taught me who I really am." And in those quiet moments, with the city sparkling beyond their windows and their future stretching out before them like an unwritten song, they both knew that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not fairy tale, but real, honest, and absolutely worth fighting for. The invisible girl had learned the most important lesson of all. She had never been invisible. She had just been waiting for the right moment to be seen.